realizes the silence didn't break politely. It cracked. And when it cracked, it sent shockwaves straight from a locked room in Windsor to a manic mansion in Montecito. Because here's the truth, nobody in the palace wants said out loud. Prince Andrew is talking, not whispering, not hinting, talking. And every word he's letting slip is rattling the very foundations Meghan Markle built her entire royal fantasy on. For years, Andrew was the family's human firewall, disgraced, isolated, stripped, sacrificed, so the rest of the monarchy could survive. He took the fall, he wore the scarlet letter, he became the cautionary tale. And Meghan, she walked away untouched, untested, unquestioned until now. Because according to insiders circling the royal periphery, Andrew has reached the point no man reaches quietly, nothing left to lose. Titles gone, reputation annihilated, doors slammed, friends vanished, protection withdrawn. And when a man reaches that point, the rules change. The whispers say Andrew is tired of being the only name dragged through the Epstein mud, while others skate by on media protection and selective outrage. He knows the dates, he knows the locations, and most dangerously of all, he knows who else was present in those circles, Meghan shocked as Andrew's conf. And this is where Meghan's name stops feeling theoretical. Because the question people in royal backrooms are now asking isn't if Andrew will talk, it's who he'll take down with him. Here's what's driving panic behind palace gates. Andrew's alleged private claims don't just involve vague associations. They involve overlapping social worlds, shared elite pipelines, and one glaring anomaly: why one royal was obliterated while another woman moving through the same orbit was never even questioned. Same era, same circles, same access, different outcome, and that discrepancy is eating away at Andrew. Sources say he's been venting to old allies, muttering about double standards and selective morality. But behind those words sits something far more volatile: resentment. Resentment that Meghan was allowed to rebrand herself as a global victim while he was turned into a global villain. And that resentment is dangerous, because buried inside it is a claim that flips Meghan's entire origin story on its head. The story of the innocent actress who stumbled into royalty by chance. According to what's being whispered, Andrew is hinting that Meghan's entry into elite royal adjacent circles was neither accidental nor romantic. It was engineered. Enter the name the palace never says out loud anymore: Jeffrey Epstein. The public narrative tells us Andrew was uniquely reckless, singularly compromised. But the deeper story, the one the media tiptoes around, points to a network not a lone prince. And that network didn't disappear when Epstein did. Now, look at the photographs people were told to ignore. Yachts, private gatherings, exclusive social spaces that don't appear on Instagram captions but show up in flight logs and whispered recollections. One of Epstein's last known girlfriends moved exclusively through those channels, jets, yachts, invitation-only worlds. And then, in the same time frame, images surface of Meghan Markle in eerily similar environments. Not proof, but not coincidence either. And here's where the story turns radioactive. Virginia Giuffre, the woman whose testimony detonated Andrew's royal standing, reportedly knew Meghan from those same social circles. So well, in fact, that at one point, her legal team allegedly considered calling Meghan as a witness. Let that land not as a defendant, as someone who saw, someone who knew. The palace went silent. No clarifications, no denials, no curiosity. And silence at that level isn't neutrality, it's strategy. Because linking Meghan Markle, the Duchess turned Netflix crusader, to the Epstein ecosystem doesn't just damage her. It forces the monarchy to answer an even uglier question: how did someone with those connections end up on the Buckingham Palace balcony? That's why nothing has moved publicly. Not because Meghan is protected, but because the institution is protecting itself. And to understand how she crossed that threshold, you have to look at the man insiders call the ghost in the machine, Marcus Anderson. To the public, he's a Soho House executive, a connector, a friend. To insiders, he's something else entirely. The allegation is chilling. Anderson didn't just befriend Meghan, he placed her. Toronto, New York, London, Istanbul. Wherever power gathered quietly, Meghan appeared conveniently. When Soho House opened in Toronto, Meghan wasn't just handed a membership, she was allegedly recruited, introduced to a curated ecosystem of billionaires, royalty, adjacent figures, and social climbers with private access and untraceable traceable influence. This wasn't networking, it was positioning. And those same pathways overlapped with Prince Andrew's known social routes. So when the world was told Harry met Meghan organically, Andrew's private version tells a different story. One where she was already circulating within elite corridors long before Harry ever noticed her. And then comes the twist almost no one saw coming. According to York family adjacent whispers, Harry was never the original target. Andrew was. Older, wealthier, established. A prince with property, status, and access. And allegedly, Meghan made her approach. But she miscalculated one thing: Sarah Ferguson. Fergie, divorced but deeply entangled with Andrew's life, reportedly clocked Meghan immediately. She saw ambition without allegiance, charm without loyalty, and she blocked the path. The door to Andrew slammed shut. So Meghan pivoted not away from royalty but sideways to a younger prince, a wounded prince, a man desperate for meaning, protection, and purpose. Harry didn't know he was the backup plan, but Fergie, insiders say, knew instantly. And now, years later, as Andrew sits sidelined and stripped, the irony is brutal. The man she bypassed may become the man who exposes her. And while all this unfolds, the collateral damage is already visible: Prince Harry himself. Because sources close to the California Circle whisper that the warnings Harry once dismissed as jealousy and snobbery are finally echoing louder than Netflix applause. Evidence, connections, names, realizations. Imagine the horror of discovering the woman you defended against your family was allegedly intertwined with the very uncle you were taught to see as the monarchy's greatest disgrace. Harry, insiders say, is unraveling, isolated, trapped, staring at the wreckage of a life he detonated in the name of love, only to wonder whether he ever truly knew who he married. And this is only the beginning, because Andrew hasn't spoken publicly yet. And when he does, nothing stays buried. By the time dawn breaks over Buckingham Palace, the fear is no longer abstract, it's operational. Because Prince Andrew isn't just sulking in exile anymore, he's calculating. This is a phase nobody prepares for, when a disgraced insider realizes silence no longer protects him, when loyalty stops making sense, when shame turns into leverage. And Andrew's leverage is terrifying. According to whispers threading through royal back channels, Andrew isn't threatening vague revelations. He's sitting on specifics, dates, locations, introductions, names that form a chain too neat to dismiss, not gossip. Receipts adjacent memory, the kind that makes lawyers sweat and press offices freeze. This is why the palace isn't moving against Meghan even now. Because if Andrew speaks first, the monarchy loses control of the narrative forever. Here's what's reportedly keeping senior courtiers awake. Andrew knows how the sausage was made. He knows how access is brokered quietly, how people are vetted selectively, how some backgrounds are interrogated aggressively while others are waved through because the timing is inconvenient. And Meghan's past? It sits in that inconvenient category. For years, the palace played a dangerous game of mutual silence. Andrew stayed quiet, and the institution kept him financially afloat, hidden but contained. Meghan left loudly, but the palace didn't counterattack. No dossiers, no bullying report, no pre-royal deep dive released publicly. That wasn't mercy, that was a ceasefire. Because detonating Meghan's history means reopening Andrew's, and by extension, reopening Epstein, and by extension, reopening the question the monarchy cannot afford to answer: who else knew? That's the nightmare scenario. That's why the king's strategy hasn't been confrontation, it's containment. Slow erosion, quiet distancing, letting Meghan and Harry exhaust their credibility without forcing a direct collision. But Andrew doesn't care about strategy anymore. He's watching Meghan monetize victimhood while he's frozen in disgrace. He's watching Netflix specials rewrite reality while his name remains synonymous with scandal. And insiders say he's furious at the hypocrisy. He was destroyed for proximity, one source whispers. She was protected for the same thing. And Andrew is done being the fall guy. The truly dangerous shift is this: Andrew has reportedly begun floating test balloons, casual comments, hypotheticals. If I talked, others would fall. He's gauging reaction. And every reaction so far has told him the same thing: people are terrified. Because the moment Andrew goes on record, the palace loses its ability to claim ignorance. The press loses plausible deniability. And Meghan loses the moral high ground she's been standing on like a stage prop. And that's when the silence around King Charles and Catherine starts to make sense. No statements, no defenses, no visible support. Because this isn't about liking Meghan or disliking her anymore. This is about institutional survival. If the public discovers that a woman with alleged proximity to one of the darkest social networks in modern history wasn't just missed but managed, then the monarchy doesn't look unlucky. It looks reckless, or worse, complicit. That's why the bullying report remains buried. That's why palace aides won't brief journalists off record about Meghan's early years. Because once the door opens, Andrew's story doesn't exist in isolation. It becomes a web. And then there's Harry, the most tragic figure in this entire implosion. Because insiders say Harry is finally connecting dots he once refused to see. Names he dismissed, warnings he labeled prejudice. He's reportedly been confronted with information that reframes his marriage from us against the world into something far darker. Him being the last to know. Imagine realizing the person you sacrificed everything for may have been navigating elite power corridors long before you ever entered the picture. That you weren't the fairy tale rescue, you were the end game. Sources whisper that Harry oscillates between denial and rage. That some days he's silent for hours, other days he explodes, not at the palace, but at the woman beside him. And Meghan knows it. That's why Montecito feels less like exile and more like a countdown clock. Because Andrew hasn't even spoken publicly yet, and already the pressure is suffocating. He knows where the bodies are buried metaphorically. He knows which friendships were transactional, which introductions weren't innocent, which photos never made headlines, and most dangerously of all, he knows who helped smooth the path. The York family, long treated as expendable, suddenly holds nuclear material. Fergie's silence isn't loyalty, it's currency. And the longer Meghan ignores them, the more incentive Andrew has to burn everything down. The final irony is cruel. Meghan's greatest strength, her ability to control narrative, may be useless against a man who doesn't care about redemption anymore. Andrew doesn't need to be believed universally, he just needs to introduce doubt. And doubt is lethal. Once people start asking why certain questions were never asked, the entire story fractures. The activist persona, the victim narrative, the outsider myth, all of it collapses under one simple realization: she wasn't outside the system, she moved through it fluently. The palace knows this. That's why they're stalling, waiting, hoping Andrew stays quiet long enough for time to do their work. But time is Andrew's enemy and his motivation. A man with nothing left to lose doesn't wait for permission. And as the days tick by, the atmosphere thickens. Legal teams hover. Courtiers whisper. California watches the news obsessively. Because when Andrew finally speaks, whether in an interview, a memoir, or a single careless confirmation, the dominoes won't fall one by one. They'll collapse all at once. This isn't about revenge anymore. It's about exposure. And when the truth finally surfaces about the yachts, the introductions, the handlers, the pivots, the discarded allies, the fairy tale won't just end. It will be reclassified. Not as a love story, not as an escape, but as a calculated ascent that underestimated one fatal variable. The man she thought was finished is the man holding the match. And once he strikes it, no one walks away clean.